believe it or not, I was not always this into politics. Yes, I had a normal phase before I started focusing on and doing a podcast about politics as a teenager. Like, doing a podcast about politics for your job is one thing, but doing a podcast about politics as a teenager when you make like literally no money, I mean, I don't blame people for thinking that I'm insane. Like, why would I care? Why would I even want to take any interest in politics? I mean, no influence on me, no influence on my life. I used to like sports. What drew me off of sports? Well, really, to be completely honest with you, it was the 2016 election. And me being on YouTube and slowly discovering a YouTube channel called The Young Turks. And the only really thing that made me the left-wing person that I am today really was the fact that, largely due to YouTube's algorithm, I found the Young Turks before I found, say, a Ben Shapiro. And the Young Turks, obviously, in the course of the 2016 election, they talked about many things. And I really started kind of getting into it during the summer, not really kind of after Bernie Sanders really wasn't part of the picture anymore. But they still did talk about him. I watched some of the old videos about the primaries and what influence Bernie Sanders had. And one thing stuck out to me, this guy was different than any other politician on the spectrum. He was different because he was honest. He was normal, and he actually kind of knew and had principles and policies. I had not nearly the knowledge of politics that I have now, but that to me was plainly obvious. Like, he had principles, he was different, and he stood out from all the rest. I then began to discover other YouTube channels that taught me about the fight for Medicare for All and how Bernie Sanders was leading that fight and how important a policy like that was. And I really, from that point, through people like Bernie Sanders and through people like the YouTube channels that I watch, like, I'm not gonna lie, YouTube played such a role. It sounds kind of like dumb, but really, YouTube had such a role on my political development, because from there I discovered people like Secular Talk, Kyle Kalinske, and then the Majority Report, and all those people. And then I discovered political podcasts like Chapo Trap House, which kind of taught me that it was okay to be really pissed off. And maybe we aren't pissed off enough about how much everything sucks. And we're not paying attention to the massive amounts of injustices in the world. So that's kind of my political development, and really through every step of the way. The one person, at least in elected politics, that's always shined super bright and forward-facing for me has been, without a doubt, the senator from Vermont, Senator Bernie Sanders. He was absolutely someone throughout the time between when he dropped out in 2016 to when he announced in 2020, I think. Well, no, it was 2019. He announced in 2019, like February 2019, I think it was. But I remember where I was, because all this time I had known in my heart of hearts Bernie Sanders was going to run again, and I was like, this is going to be the moment where I get to see magic happen. This Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign will be magic. I was skiing, literally I was skiing, no joke, and I saw the notification pop up on my phone, and I just got so excited. Like, I was entering almost a manic state of happiness. I was like, this is happening. I cannot believe this is happening. He's running again. I've heard so much about him. I've heard that I've seen what he's done, and now he's going to be able to run for president again, and I'm going to be able to live through it. How awesome is this? I mean, I have sitting behind me right now the Bernie Sanders sign that I got from the Bernie Sanders rally that I went to, the first ever political rally that I went to with like-minded friends, the Queens rally. And it really is kind of sad to think that I won't be able to go to any more Bernie Sanders rallies again. And it's very, very sad to see that there was a campaign that I assumed was, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I knew it was not going to be easy to get through this primary. But in my heart of hearts, I kind of always believed that we would be able to get through this. It looked really good. I sent money. No doubt about that. Because Bernie Sanders really, in a way, no one else has ever had in my very short political life. He stood out to me. He inspired me. And even though I haven't watched many years and many political election cycles, like, this is a guy who I just knew to be different because he actually cared. I think the best way to put it was, like, he was one of the few people in the town of Washington, D.C. who genuinely cared, and it kept him up at night. Whether people got their insulin or their healthcare coverage or their debt paid off. Like, he was invested in the struggles of everyday people, which is something that is really so hard to underestimate. It's so hard to understate the importance, or hard to overstate the importance of that principle. And I think it really showed through to all of his supporters. He cared about really making people's lives better. And for that reason, he attracted a mass movement. It was something that really was a binding feature like no one else. And not only did he attract a mass movement, he changed the scope of the political, he moved the Overton window to what is possible in America. Like, for example, as recently as years like 2006, 2008, 2014, the idea that Medicare for all, a single-payer healthcare system, would be discussed as possibility in America would be something unfathomable. That would really be discussed. We never had any advocates for it. No one pushed for it. But not only did Bernie Sanders push for it and get it on the way, as he said yesterday, we have won the ideological struggle, which I think is definitely more true than not true. He inspired a whole bunch of people, both young and old, like me, and even like my mom, to get behind him and see the need for Medicare for all. She was almost as sad as I was yesterday when the news came that Bernie Sanders dropped out. And for that reason, I'd like to spend at least a good portion of today's episode remembering and thanking Bernie Sanders for the incredible work he has done, because my political life, my political transformation and development would not be the same without him. On today's show, we remember Bernie Sanders with great eulogizations by Jack Crosby, Paul Blest, and more in the Discourse blog. The people who started it all, and what Joe Biden is doing to try and win this election and win over Bernie Sanders supporters. Let's take a look at his efforts and why that is so important. What could he do to win over Bernie Sanders supporters? We'll be also talking about that as well here on the newest episode of Newsflash. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us today. We start today with a little bit of a pep talk. Why there is no time for despair. As Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign is over, he was the best candidate for office that has run in decades, and he will almost certainly never run for president again, and I think he shouldn't. I mean, we need to find at least new leaders at this point that will be able to carry us forward, and most likely, a lot of them you don't even know their names. Like, they're still running all across the country. There's some here in for example, my district. Shout out Mondaire Jones. Shout out the Justice Democrats endorsed Jamal Bowman. They're all challenging, actually, Mondaire Jones is running an open district in my seat, Nita Lowy, for our House of Representatives area. And then we have the nearby, New York 16th, I believe, Jamal Bowman, Justice Democrats endorse running to replace the hawkish Democrat Elliot Engel. So that is very, very good. Like, these are people that are running, you don't even know their names. Like, if there's someone running in your district, that is great. But, like, just to raise your hopes and give you an idea that there are great progressive leaders that we don't even know about. So we talked about people like Jamal Bowman running in New York's 16th. He's a principal a school principal who spent his life educating and advocating for working people. His district is majority people of color, but is represented by an older white man who lives in Maryland. So, yeah, this is not very good. Democrat fighting for jobs and education, not bombs, and incarceration. That's right. In Massachusetts first, Alex Morse is running to replace deficit hawk and corporate Democrat Richard Neal. Alex is a prodigy who served as the mayor of Holyoke for 8 years. Richie Neal is one of the worst Democrats in the House and consistently shills for moneyed interests. So get that out there, baby. Support people. If you're in Massachusetts 1st District, probably if you live in and around Holyoke, Massachusetts, you can come out there and support Mr. Morse, Alex B. Morse. Arati for Congress. Arati Kribich. Dr. Arati Kribich is running for Congress to replace the awful Josh Gottheimer. Ari is a neuroscientist and newly energized activist who's going to prove a left platform can win amongst the indivisible moms of the suburbs. Gottheimer's slogan is about lowering taxes, so you can guess on who. He's literally one of the most insane people, Republican or Democrat, in elected office right now. In Ohio's 3rd District, Morgan Harper is running to replace Representative Joyce Beatty, who accepts corporate contributions, a big corporate Democrat. Morgan is a lawyer who has worked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and has promised to reset our politics for the next generation. In New York 17th, that's my district, baby. Mondaire Jones running to fill an open seat. He grew up working class in a district and has spent his career advocating for working people as a lawyer. He'd be a big supporter of the Green New Deal and progressive priorities in Congress. Also, by the way, Ed Markey running for Senate. He, big co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. Make sure we get him in there. He could be a pretty big force. He's been challenged by one of the cursed Kennedys, Joe Kennedy III, for his Massachusetts Senate seat. Also we have people like Jess King for Delaware. She's a Democrat running for the U.S. Senate, fighting for Medicare for all, housing for all, Green New Deal, and part of the Solidarity, not Struggle movement. No corporate backs money for her. Jess King for... Jessica Rain. Jessica King, I think we ran last time, but Jessica Rain for Senate in Delaware. What I didn't even mention is Michaela Wilkes. Michaela Wilkes is pretty cool. She's running for Congress to challenge the number 2 Democrat primary challenger for Steny Hoyer in Maryland's 5th District. She's running on the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, and a homes guarantee, as well as criminal justice reform and more. She's endorsed by the Metro DC DSA. And so here is just give her a taste of what you're going to get with her. This is her political ad that she released about a year ago when she started running. She's been grinding for a long time. So if you really want, I think donating to her as well would be absolutely amazing. So take a look at this out.
I didn't think that I would be where I am today. Chances are that I should be unemployed, in jail, or probably even worse. I'm running for Congress for Maryland's 5th District, but getting here has definitely not been easy. When I was 15, I was placed in juvenile detention facilities for running away from home. There was even one instance where a guard threatened to hold me down and cut my braids out if I didn't cut them out myself. I was even jailed for driving on a suspended license. I was 7 months pregnant, living paycheck to paycheck. I couldn't afford to pay all my tickets and court fees, and I had no choice but to drive or I'd lose my job. We need a criminal justice system that offers rehabilitation instead of exploitation. This is why I want to end cash bail. I want to end the failed war on drugs, and I want to make sure that pregnant women are treated fairly in prison. And I also want to get rid of the predatory rates that prisoners and their families are forced to pay in order to speak to their loved ones. Families shouldn't have to choose between putting food on the table and making a phone call to talk to one of their loved ones. Our representation is so out of touch with the people's needs. Even worse, they're funded by those who profit off our most vulnerable. Check out the rest of my platform online because we